In this video, we're going to go through some examples for the 2 intro astrology learning videos. This would be Astrology 103 and 104. And in those 2 videos, we discussed the signs of the sun and the moon, and then we talked about Mercury through Pluto and what those meant. Now, there wasn't enough time to go through every sign of Mercury, Venus, Mars. That is something we're going to do in the second half of 2024, where every month from July through December, we're going to pick a planet and we're going to go through each one of the zodiac signs for those planets. So that will be fun. But today I had 6 volunteers from the $5 and $10 tiers to have to share their astrology charts, and we're going to look at a few planets in their chart and what the planets in that particular sign mean. And I'm going to pick some planets I think that stand out and that are probably more noticeable in that person's personality. So Lisa and Christina were the first ones to respond. So I have Christina's chart up here. So let's start with Christina. And Christina's chart, she has 5 placements in Taurus, and her 10th house is quite large. So all of these planets fit inside her 10th house. And so her being a Taurus is probably what people will notice most about her personality, because 2 of her big 3 are in Taurus. The big 3 is the sun, the moon, and the rising sign. And here we have, she was born right before a new moon, and we see the moon and the sun right there with Chiron in between them. And Taurus is all about simplicity and security. It's about routine, knowing what to expect, and doing the same thing over and over again, because that represents security. If this particular action gets me this result 90% of the time, then I know what to expect, and that's what they're comfortable with. And surprises, chaos might be difficult to handle with someone who has lots of planets in Taurus. Here next to the sun, we have Mercury, and Taurus is a quiet sign. It's not very chatty, but anyone that has Sun conjunct Mercury is usually a talker. So Christina, I bet you have to have a nice balance, or at least a sufficient amount of silence and a sufficient amount of conversation. And you probably only know that you just have to be able to go by how you feel, and that might change from day to day. This little symbol here looks like a hook. That's next to Mercury. That's Ceres, C-E-R-E-S. In Greek mythology, Ceres was known as Demeter, and I have a couple videos where I discuss that. In Astrology 105, I discuss some of the common asteroids like Ceres. But Taurus is the earth, anything that's natural. It's plants, animals, gardening, but it's also music and whatever creates that inner peace within you. Taurus is about finding inner peace and inner serenity. And for some people, silence in the outer world is a quick way to get to inner peace and finding inner peace. But it doesn't have to be silence. It could be music, listening to someone who has a beautiful voice. I think people that have Pisces emphasis have beautiful voices, especially Mercury in Pisces or Mercury in Cancer. And I think we have a couple of them. I think Lisa has 6 placements in Pisces, and she's next. So we'll get to see that. But listening to someone sing, whatever produces that inner peace, for Christina, she needs a regular dose of that. And she has Jupiter, Mars, and Saturn in the sign of Virgo. And let's look at Mars and Virgo. We said that Mars, Virgo and Taurus, by the way, are all earth signs. So all of her inner planets, except for Venus, they're all in earth. So the material plane, financial security, being well grounded, those are all important for earth signs. But with Mars is how we need to defend ourselves, how we need to take action in order to get what we want, because Mars is what we want. she needs to do those in a way that is Virgoan. So Virgo is about service, which is interesting because Mars is what motivates you. Mars and the sun both rule over that, but Mars can be what motivates you. And knowing that you're helping another person can motivate you. Unless you're in the middle of chaos, then you probably don't want to help anyone. You probably want someone to help you. But when you're in your kind of natural, calm state, if you know someone else needs you and you can help, that can be motivating. Virgo is also organizing and paying attention to health. And so organizing your environment and having schedule and having everything set can actually help you get to where you want to be a little faster. And Virgo is also, sometimes Virgo types will argue because they want to be right. And so being analytical, digging into the details, having verbal battles, you're willing to do that to get what you want sometimes. Kind of depends on your mood, whether it's peace or and there's a lot more going on here that we could integrate. I mean, this is Astrology 103 and 104, but then in the later videos, I don't know if it's like 107, maybe we'll be talking about aspects and where we bring in other planets. And so because Uranus here at the bottom at 23 degrees Scorpio is opposite the Sun and Mercury at 23 degrees Taurus. And so this Taurus planets opposite Uranus mean I need routine, but I also need surprises sometimes. I also need to be independent. Uranus represents independence, and when it's strongly emphasized in the chart, sometimes Uranus is the antithesis of boredom. So sometimes Taurus can be a little bit boring and you need a little excitement. So I just, this next chart is Lisa, and I just mentioned Lisa because Christina has lots of planets in Taurus, so her Taurus side of her personality is quite evident a lot of the time. And here with Lisa, she has so many placements. She has 6 placements in Pisces, and so that will be quite evident with her, this Pisces side to her. And Pisces is all about connecting with her spirit and connecting with the universe, with humanity. Spirituality is important. Letting go of ego and ego needs and focusing on other people and what other people need, especially since there are several of these placements in the 7th house of the other, which is usually the partner or a best friend or the one-to-one relationships. Whereas Christina had Sun conjunct Mercury, here we have Sun conjunct Venus. They're not super close, they're about 10 to about 11 degrees apart, but because it's the Sun, that's pretty close. And Venus, so her personality or identity is Piscean, but it also is very Venusian, and Venus is about love and partnerships and beauty and creativity. And Pisces is very creative, so I would bet that Lisa has quite a bit of creative ability there. So we have the Sun and Venus, and then next to the Sun is Ceres, which is an asteroid, and I discuss in Astrology 105 where we talk about the asteroids. And then we have the North Node, which is the direction that Lisa needs to head in this life to have success. And so it's important for her to express her Piscean side. And then we have Mercury and Juno there as well. And as I would include this as a Sun-Mercury conjunction because that's about an 11-degree conjunction as well. That would mean that the Sun is at the midpoint of Venus and Mercury. The Sun is at the halfway point. And so Pisces can be idealistic, but because the Sun is at the midpoint of Venus and Mercury, a Venus-Mercury combination can also be idealistic. So there's some idealism here. And Juno is about relationships as well. And so Venus next to the Sun in the 7th house, and Juno might be in the 6th, but it's still part of this Piscean stellium. So, and Juno is the good wife. And so here there's 3 different things that have an emphasis on relationships. So relationships are a very, very important theme. And because that North Node is so close to the 7th house, I would consider that a 4th. It's like the rule of 3 in astrology. I did a video on that, the rule of 3. If you see something, the same theme 3 or more times, it's very important for that person. But when I was doing Christina's video, I said Christina liked peace and calm, and it didn't have to just be silence. It could be music or someone listening to someone who has a beautiful voice. I said Mercury and Pisces or Cancer have nice voices. I think I did an example in one of the intro videos where I talked about Gene Wilder, who has Mercury and Cancer. I think he has a nice voice. And so does Lisa. And Mercury is communication. It's how we speak. It's how our voice sounds, but it's also what we like to talk about. Pisces does not want to hurt anyone's feelings, so I would say that Lisa absolutely does not. Maybe that's an anxiety. I don't want to say anything that will hurt anyone. And you probably like talking about spiritual things or creative ideas or anything that's in your imagination. That Mercury is how we think, and so your mind is probably very imaginative and very creative. I don't know if you've ever done any creative writing, telling stories. Pisces is the sign of psychic ability and intuition. So again, we have a very intuitive mind. Pisces is a water sign. So when I think of Mercury ruling over memory, maybe the emotional memory is a little bit stronger. If something happens that causes you to be very emotional, whether it was traumatic or whether it was exciting, if it has some kind of emotional charge to it, you're probably more likely to remember it. I would say that would go with all the water signs of Mercury in Cancer, Scorpio, or Pisces. But if it's empathy, if you feel empathy for another person, you're more likely to remember that. You're more likely to think about it and what you can do to help. Pisces is sensitive, it's the daydreamer, and vivid imagination for sure. Verlin is next on the list, and this chart is really interesting because he was born right at the end of Taurus on May 21st, and his sun is at 29 degrees of Taurus, 37 minutes. And so sometimes people born on the cusp are confused. Which sign am I? And he's definitely a Taurus. But some people think that if you're born on the cusp of 2 different signs, right at the end of one or right at the beginning of another one, they think that they have the characteristics of both signs then. And it's not true. You're either one side or the other. So it's important to know what time you're born. Here I have a 7 a.m. birth time, and because the sign changes, the sun sign changes, we think it changes at midnight. I think that's what most people assume, but it doesn't always change at midnight. It can change in the middle of the day, and it can change at different times. And so it's important to know birth sign, especially if you're born on the cusp. But here Verlin is a Taurus, and this is one of those instances where you may think, oh, I'm born on the cusp, I'm Taurus, but I also have Gemini characteristics. And I could see why you would think that, because you have 4 placements in Gemini. And so that Gemini is very strong. Here we also have Sun conjunct Mercury, just like with Lisa and Christina. And that Mercury is in its favorite sign, which is Gemini. Mercury is the mind, and Gemini is the sign of the mind and communication and talking. Taurus can be very quiet, and it likes quiet and peace, but that Mercury wants to talk, so don't ever. And here we have Cancer rising, which can be a little more shy, but when you have Mercury in Gemini and strongly placed, like here it's placed conjunct the sun, it can overrule anything else, any other kind of shyness in the chart. And the moon is in Gemini and also Uranus. So moon in Gemini, the moon is how we feel. It's our inner world. In your inner world, you want to talk. So you have lots of ideas going on in the inner world. You have lots of ideas in the mind. Mercury, inner world, moon, both in Gemini. And so you want to get those out. You want to share those with other people. And it's not that you want to, there's an excitement there, like almost like, I can't wait to share this. You got to hear this. I can almost hear you saying it. Listen to this. And that's really fun because your ideas are, they are very fun. And you have a lot of them. And that can be difficult when we have lots of great ideas, but only so much time. So it's like, oh, I got to pick one. I got to narrow these down. And, can the body keep up with the mind? And here, I see your body tries to keep up with the mind. And we also have two other inner planets in Taurus, Venus and Mars. And so that Taurus is prominent. It's loving to be in nature. Financial security is important. Taking care of what you own. Those are all just important as the Gemini planets. But when you have Mercury and Gemini, especially when it's conjunct the sun like this, that being the talker usually outshines anything else in the chart. That's usually what people notice first. Here we have Pam, someone I've known for quite a while, but never looked at your chart. So this is fun. Thank you for giving me your information. There is a correct birth time here. And so this is fun. The sun is in Aquarius. The sun is identity. So that is being the humanitarian, liking things that are different and unusual, wanting to be someone who's a little different or unusual, or enjoying technology, wanting to help others is very Aquarian. Your moon in Capricorn and Capricorn rising. That means Capricorn was the sign that was rising in the east when you were born. And so that's probably something that people would notice first about you. Let's see, it was probably a crescent moon rising at 4:32 a.m. when you were born. And so the moon is nurturing, its motherhood, but in the sign of Capricorn, Capricorn is more father. I'll put that in air quotes because I think we're changing our definition of gender and gender roles now. But so this is your like mother and father wrapped up in one. When there's a planet rising in the chart, it was rising in the east at the time of birth, that planet becomes very prominent in our personality. And if we look up at the midheaven, which is the beginning of the 10th house, we see Neptune. And if you have any planets in that area, that's also prominent in the personality. And so here, being mother and nurturing, but nurturing in a very fatherly way sometimes, like that sounds kind of funny, but being organized and responsible, and no problem being the disciplinarian and the nurturer. But also with Neptune, that's how people kind of see you from a distance. And so Neptune is the goddess, and it also represents someone who's very sweet. And in addition to the moon and rising in Capricorn, there's Mercury there in Capricorn. There's a little S next to it. Anytime you see if an S in a chart, that means it was stationed. And because Mercury looks like it goes like this through the sky, because we're all revolving around the sun, but it looks like Mercury's going around the earth. And so sometimes Mercury will slow down, looks like it slows down, stops, and then it'll go retrograde. If you've ever heard about Mercury retrograde. Most people say run for cover, but if you listen to my daily videos, you know that I don't like that. There's no reason to run for a cover. But when Mercury slows down and stops to go retrograde, or it slows down and stops to go direct, then it's station. And it's uncommon to be born right on a Mercury station, which you are. And so it's kind of has that Mercury retrograde feel to it in a way by being a little bit more imaginative and going inward, but also make it very prominent in some way. Where you are a thinker, you are a planner, because Mercury's in the sign of Capricorn. That's how you think. You like to plan. You want things to be structured and ordered, and in order for you to learn new things, because Mercury is how we learn, the information needs to be presented to you in an organized, structured way. But you have that Mercury station. Anytime a planet's stationed, it's strong, it's prominent. Our attention should go right there. You have a very strong mind. And it's opposite Uranus over there in the 7th house. And so your thinking is very independent from the public. You have your own mind. And that's also it's a trait of Uranus, but it's also a trait of the sign Capricorn. Independence, self-sufficiency. It's not just how you think. For you, it's a way of life because Mercury is stationed. And here we have Chastity's chart. And Chastity's big three, they're all in air signs. Sun in Aquarius, rising, and Moon in Gemini, getting ready to go in the 4th house, and Aquarius rising, because Sun was rising in Aquarius. Mercury is there as well. So air signs are communication, information, talking, are the mental plane, how we learn. And of these two air signs, the Aquarius would be a bit stronger and that's the one that people see more. The sign Aquarius is the humanitarian, it's independence, and so we would see this very strong in her behavior and how she thinks. And because Mercury's in Aquarius, that's how you think. You think independently from other people. So there can be a little stubbornness there, but with the Moon in Gemini, the Moon is our inner world and how we feel. And so, and it's getting ready to go in the 4th house. So the 4th house is home and family, where you kind of need to be home sometimes. And Gemini's curious. Gemini wants to talk to people and get out of the house and do stuff, but it also likes to be home a lot. So maybe you would rather invite people to your house sometimes rather than going out and doing things. But Gemini and Aquarius are both known for social life. Aquarius needs their friends around, and Gemini needs to talk to people. So social life is very important here with these two signs. And because the Sun rules our outward personality and the Moon rules our inner world, people can see these. In any time if I said this to anyone who knew you, they'd be like, "Yep, that's Chastity." Air signs aren't super sensitive emotionally, but Venus rules over Venus is how we need to relate to others. It is in the water sign of Pisces. It is in the 1st house, which makes it a little stronger. And so, and especially in how you project yourself and present yourself to other people. And so this brings in a little bit more emotional sensitivity. Maybe not all the time, but if a friend comes to you with a problem, your heart bleeds for them and you want to help. And here we have Venus in Pisces next to Pallas or Pallas Athena, that I just have a video put out, Astrology 105, which is on the asteroids. And if an asteroid is prominent in your chart, and here conjunct Venus in the South Node in the 1st house, Pallas for you is a little bit more prominent than any of the other asteroids in your chart. I would say it's the most prominent, and she's the goddess of wisdom. And so offering your wisdom to your friends or to your partner and wanting to help, you want to help in more of a, as far as like ideas, if it has to do with ideas, talking things out, anything verbal, information, communication, that's where your talents are, and that's where you're going to want to go. So you're going to be sensitive to how they feel emotionally, but your solution there is probably going to be one of information, because Pallas here is in Pisces, but she operates more on the mental plane of wisdom and ideas. And this comes from a past life, because it is in they're next to the South Node, which is in the 1st house. Here we have Sylvia's chart. I think with a lot of the examples today, people have had stelliums in particular signs, and I know we did with Christina and with Lisa and with Berlin, and Here, Sylvia has like 3 stelliums, one in Gemini. She has 4 placements in Gemini, 5 placements in Cancer if we count the rising sign. So there's 4 planets there, and then the rising signs in Cancer. And then we have 4 placements in Leo, and they're all shoved to the left side of the chart. And the left side of the chart is more focused on self, whereas the right side of the chart is more focused on the other. So this is more focused on not selfishness, but just a more personal focus on one's personal developments or your place in the world. And by learning more about yourself and working through your issues, you're able to help other people, and you want to, because Chiron's over there by its lonesome and at the beginning of the 7th house. But anytime there's a planet pretty close to the beginning of the 1st or 7th house, or even the 4th or the 10th, that planet can become very strong. So Chiron's very strong there over in the 7th. Chiron's the wounded healer, and you can help feel relief from your own wound by helping other people. And because it's over there by itself, and the 7th house is the house of marriage and partnership, but it's also the house of the public. And so everything you learn about yourself, you want to share with others, and the universe will bring you people who maybe are in pain or in need of healing. And that shadow work that you may do with yourself and working on your own issues, you use those to help others because of that opposition. Chiron is opposite Uranus, Mars, the Sun, and maybe even Ceres over in the 1st house. Now the Sun in Cancer, Cancer is the sign of home and family. The symbol is the crab, and the crab needs its shell to protect itself and to protect, to feel safe and to feel secure. Cancer, people who have a lot of planets in Cancer, especially if it's the Sun or the Moon, they can feel like they need protection. From something, like to protect themselves emotionally, or so they'll develop a protective outer layer to present to the world until they feel like safe enough to kind of let out the real them. And so it's like, well, how does that form? How does that shell form? What does it look like? And so we'll go to the moon sign. So here the moon is in the sign of Leo. And Leo is fun, especially with the moon in Leo. I tease people sometimes and I say, it's what you need in order to be happy. So the moon is our needs, it's our emotions, the inner world. What you need in order to be happy. The moon is important, and you need, I usually tell people, you need drinks, parties, tall tales, and an audience. But it's not always about like parties and stuff, but it's about having a good time. It's also about being creative, maybe telling some stories, a little drama, a little excitement. Leos are fun people. And so that might be the shell that the mask you wear. They say the rising sign is the mask, but here in this case, with your rising sign being in Cancer, Cancer is probably not the mask you wear. I would say it's that moon in Leo. And Leo people can tend to be chatty. The Mercury is there, but we also have Pluto next to the moon. And so that kind of adds to that reserve a little bit. So there's a little bit of reserve with you. And Venus and Jupiter are both in Gemini, and Venus in Gemini can be fun too, because Gemini is a talker, and that's how you relate. You are a communicator. All these Cancer planets, someone may look at your chart and say, oh, you're really shy, but I would say there's some reserve, but I don't know if shy is how I would describe you. And I've known you a little bit through social media, and you do communicate, you like to comment on posts, so I'd say that's probably right. Venus is how we need to relate, and you relate through communication, having conversation, being open, being curious about other people, and asking questions. And so that moon in Leo really enjoys the Venus in Gemini. And then once you communicate with someone for a while, you get to know them, you get information about them, then you feel better about letting them into your inner world and expressing those Cancer planets.